Hi students, in this session on Gandhian alternatives to contemporary issues, we will discuss trusteeship. Beginning with the position that exploitation is at the root of all violence, Gandhi built his economic ideas in such a manner that avoids exploitation of man by man. The remedy suggested by him to do away with concentration of economic power was economic decentralization. He asserted that if India is to evolve along non-violent lines, it will have to decentralize many things. Gandhi has advocated economic decentralization as the technique of non-violent democracy. He visualized a decentralized economic policy where there would be no exploitation in the economic field. He was fully convinced that in an underdeveloped country like India, concentration of economic power in the hands of socio-political and economic milieu of this century. In economic field, Gandhi was in favor of production by masses rather than mass production. He wants to bring about the decentralization of economic power in the form of self-sufficient and self-governing village communities. Gandhi does not believe that centralization would be conducive to the common welfare of mankind. According to him, every centralized activity accomplishes with some force. In the words of K. M. Ratnam Chetty, this carries with it certain irregularities and difficulties. 1. Mechanized economy is based on violence and fraud. Number 2. Large scale production in factories leads to maximum exploitation. Number 3. A gap is created between haves and have-nots. Number 4. As economic concentration is going hand in hand with concentration of political power, it tends towards dictatorship. Number 5. Centralization of industrial skill in big factories results not only in centralization of large population in cities, but also curtails individual freedom. This shows that centralized economy leads to inequality, violence, injustice, competition, exploitation, and take us away from the path of morality. So, Gandhi suggested decentralized economy as a remedial measure to all the above said evil because it offers greater scope for equity. It is thus the most important principle in Gandhian economy. Gandhi's aim for supporting decentralization of economic power is to serve the interest of all people and thereby leading to Sarvodaya economic order. Here he finds solution to all the modern ills like unlimited violence, economic exploitation, arbitrary state power, removal of poverty and socio-economic inequalities. To bring about Sarvodaya economic order through decentralization of economy, Gandhi put forward certain ideals and schemes which included bread labor, trusteeship, simplicity, cooperation, Swadeshi, etc. One of the most important among these doctrines is trusteeship. Now, let us have a detailed study of this economic concept of Gandhi. Trusteeship. Mahatma Gandhi was not a doctrinaire economist in the true sense of the term, but in his lifetime he formulated a number of novel concepts to bring about an equitable economic order in the society. He was motivated to propound his theory of trusteeship by genuine desire to establish cordial relations among all sections of the society through the use of accumulated wealth of a few people for the common good of all. According to Devadatta Dabilkar, voluntary surrender of privileges, power and prestige without expecting anything in return is trusteeship. The aim of trusteeship is to avoid concentration of economic power in the rich and thereby reducing exploitation of the weak by the strong. Such a non-violent society helps to foster equality of all. Sources of trusteeship. Gandhi derived his doctrine of trusteeship from the study of Ishavasyopanishad, the Gita, the Bible and Snell's principle of equality. He claims that he understood the implication of the term trustee in the light of Gita. A seeker of salvation should act as trustee. Though he has command over his riches, he should not regard them as his own. The philosophy contained the concept of Ramarajya bears testimony of the fact that under the Indian cultural heritage, the rulers wielded power not for their own sake, but for their subjects. Gandhi tried to apply the above philosophical teachings to concrete realities of life for the solution of the existing economic problems. He accepted trusteeship as a practical proposition which shall liberate the wealthy and the possessing class of their sin of acquisitiveness and greed and effect a change over in favor of an egalitarian society. If he possesses more than his portion, he must become a trustee of that. It is based on a sense of morality and love, and it is nothing but a sincere working out of the doctrine of non-possession or aparigraha. Absolute non-possession is an abstraction. It is unattainable in its fullness. Aparigraha does not mean remaining satisfied with poverty. What Gandhi wanted was to avoid unnecessary possession by which individual and society are deprived of legitimate enjoyment. In his autobiography, Gandhi wrote, "Snell's discussion of the maxims of equity came to my memory. I understood more clearly in the light of Gita teaching of the implication of the word trustee. I understood the Gita teaching of non-possession to mean that those who desired salvation should act like trustees, who, though having control over great possessions, regard not an iota of them as his own." He realized that the principles of non-possession and renunciation of one's property or possession or assets as advocated in Gita can be given effect to by way of trusteeship, whereby the propertied people, while retaining their property, can still divest themselves of such possessions by holding the property in the form of trust for the real beneficiaries. Thus, we see that Gandhi tried to apply his philosophical teaching to concrete realities of life for the solution of the existing economic problem. Here we see that Gandhi visualized a transition from individual ownership to community or trust ownership in the long run. It is based on the divine spirituality of man. Trusteeship as an alternative to capitalism. The capitalists hold that the right to property is absolute and needs no intervention by the state. They believe that each man is the best judge of his own interest and would make efforts to better his own lot and also promote social good. The communists rejected the capitalist model on the ground that it inevitably led to the growth of monopolies and imperialism on the one hand and the perpetual immersion of the working class on the other. They suggested the revolutionary overthrow of the entire politico-economic system to bring about an egalitarian society through socialism. They wanted the dictatorship of proletariat through class struggle and the socialization of all means of production. Gandhi rejected this solution of communists. Gandhi severely attacked the inhuman basis of capitalism and gave an alternative to it in the form of trusteeship. Like Marx, he also wanted to liquidate capitalism to bring about socialism, but he wanted to find out a new way to win over the capitalist class, not by force, but by voluntary method. Unlike Marxism, he would not recommend an overthrow of the capitalists by force. He does not believe in class struggle to bring about socialism. He would not permit any violent struggle even against capitalists because of his firm belief in ahimsa or non-violence. Class struggle, according to him, will breed distress and hatred and thus will have a disastrous effect on society. Hence, Gandhi introduces the doctrine of trusteeship of rich as an alternative to bring about socialism. He advocated trusteeship as a relevant choice between the existing but unacceptable system of capitalist organization and its inevitable throw by violence. He believes that even the rich people, the so-called capitalists, are also human beings and so they also have an element of essential goodness in them. This goodness can be aroused by love and they may be made to believe that the wealth they possess should be utilized for the good of the poor. Gandhiji believed in the dignity of man. It is from this deep feeling of spirituality of man that Gandhi derived his ethico-economic theory of trusteeship. For him, everything belongs to God and comes from God. Trusteeship is a method for socialization of wealth. Wealth belongs to all. As God is the supreme and the only owner of everything, to hold it exclusively with love alone is a sin. Trusteeship as a method stands for socializing everything. When an individual had more than this proportionate portion, he becomes a trustee of that portion of God's property. The rich should utilize the surplus wealth for the benefit of society at large. Gandhi suggested cultivation of a spirit of detachment of wealth and utilization for oneself. Only a portion of it is needed for meeting one's legitimate needs and honorable livelihood. In fact, renunciation is inherent in human nature. That spirit of renunciation is converted into trusteeship when people living in the midst of their wealth use it in the service of mankind. The principle of trusteeship is not renunciation of holding, but renunciation while holding properties. None has the right to acquire more than what is needed to satisfy his absolute and immediate needs, particularly when millions are unable to satisfy their most basic requirements. Thus, a rich man will have possession of his wealth, of which he will use what he reasonably requires for his personal needs, and will remain as a trustee for the rest, which will be used for the welfare of the society. Here, trusteeship offers a practical possibility to the solutions of the problem of inequality in human society. The basic tenets of theory of trusteeship are: 1. Trusteeship system provides a means of transforming the capitalist order of society into an egalitarian one. It gives the capitalists a chance of reforming themselves. 2. It does not recognize any right of private ownership of property except in as much as is permitted by society for its own welfare. 3. It does not exclude legislative regulation of ownership and use of wealth. 4. An individual is not to hold wealth for selfish satisfaction or in disregard of the interest of the society. 5. Not only as a decent minimum living wage being to fixed, but also a limit to be fixed for the maximum income. The difference between the minimum and maximum is to be reasonable and equitable and variable from time to time. 6. The character of production will be determined by social necessity and not by personal greed or whim. Gandhi claims that trusteeship is a peaceful way of liquidating class conflict. He regarded trusteeship not simply as an economic system, but as a socio-political economic arrangement against the inequality of capitalism and centralization of power in socialism. Through it, Gandhi sought to abolish capitalism to an even greater degree than proposed by communists. He felt that social reorganization through nonviolent means could be achieved by persuading the rich to hand over their wealth and possession to society. Trusteeship could thus be the way for socialization of wealth and property. It exhorts each individual to give up for the society his right on the portion of wealth and property which is in excess of his requirement according to his social circumstances. It seeks to abolish the private ownership of the means of production, not by extermination of haves by have-nots, but making them cooperate with each other in the interest of the larger society. Gandhi gives the following reasons in support of the doctrine of trusteeship. 1. There is no concentration of economic power in the hands of the state, which represents violence. 2. A request can be made to the divinity of man who is gifted with the soul. The private property owners are less violent when compared with the state ownership of property. 4. It rejects the confiscation of private property and gives a chance to the rich to act as trustee. The idea of trusteeship system is most original contribution of Gandhi to the economic thought. He wanted the rich class to become trustees of the nation and to run their business for the welfare of the people. Thus, the rich man will have possession of his wealth, of which he will use what he reasonably requires for his personal needs, and will remain a trustee for the rest, which will be used for the welfare of the society. In this, the honesty of the trustee is assumed. He has to realize that his wealth he possesses does not belong to him. What belongs to him is the right to an honorable livelihood, no better than that enjoyed by millions. The rest of his wealth belongs to the community and must be used for its welfare. A capitalist has accumulated huge wealth and established several industries. He alone cannot make that. There may be so many persons who help the capitalist in accumulating that wealth. Since the poor have helped the capitalists in accumulating the wealth, they have their share in that also. The rich people here are made to realize that the capital in their hand is the fruit of labor of the poor men. This realization would make them see that the good of the society lies in using capital and riches for the good of others and not for one's personal comforts. Then capitalists would function only as a trustees for the poor. They would then keep all surplus wealth in trust, and this would guarantee both economic solidity and equality. The theme of trusteeship rests on the belief that capitalists and landlords would transfer the accumulated wealth into a trust for the common use of the society. Gandhi's trusteeship theory involved the transfer of accumulated private wealth to community ownership, where laborers and peasants are co-partners with capitalists and landlords. He puts forth this theory on the assumption that economic power should be in the hands of community, wherein each member is responsible to produce his needs and to own wealth and property of the community for the welfare of the society. As it is stated by Ms. Neeru Kapoor, at personal level, trusteeship as a movement makes man strengthen himself. At interpersonal level, trusteeship was a movement always tries to establish cordial relationship. It streamlines and strengthens the relations between individuals. At the institutional level, trusteeship's role is laudable. At institution, it stands for serving common purpose. Trusteeship as a movement goes against every kind of authority, economic, political and social, etc. In fact, trusteeship provides ample opportunity to all human beings in all spheres. Thus, it is apparent that Gandhi's doctrine of trusteeship is based on a sense of morality and love. This doctrine is nothing but a sincere working out of the doctrine of non-possession. The rich also must be made to realize through a loving process the merit of non-possession. Gandhi always stressed simplicity and satisfaction of the basic needs of human life as a cornerstone of his entire economic philosophy. He was of opinion that earth was endowed with enough resources to meet every man's basic needs, but the greed of man to capture acquisitiveness, leading to concentration of wealth in the hands of a small, privileged and influential section of society, deprived the basic needs of the majority in the society. Through trusteeship, Gandhi wanted to establish an equitable economic order through a proper scheme of the distribution of the accumulated wealth to all members of the society. But more important than this consideration was his concern to remove the selfishness from human beings by appealing to the moral consciousness of the individuals. The concept of trusteeship was put forward by Gandhi primarily to provide an opportunity to capitalists and landlords in whose hands a huge quantum of wealth of society is accumulated to voluntarily transfer their wealth to the society. The capitalists were expected to act as trustees along with other representatives of the society. This was prescribed to avoid the confiscation of surplus wealth through coercion or by the techniques of class struggle. Trusteeship was thus a non-violent alternative to class struggle and mass violence to bring about an equitable social order. Gandhi felt that trusteeship was a potent weapon to remove the ills of capitalist society by transferring it into an egalitarian society based on justice and fair play. He had firm faith in the ultimate goodness of human beings, and therefore, he was optimistic about transforming human nature for human good. The objective of trusteeship theory was to destroy capitalism and not the capitalists. Criticisms. The principle of trusteeship is subjected to severe criticisms by political commentators. They held that the trusteeship theory was hindered the socio-economic transformation of a traditional society into that of a modern industrial order. Gandhi's emphasis on satisfying basic needs of human beings and the simplicity of life were contrary to the prevailing social environment, which laid very heavy emphasis on material civilization. Trusteeship principle, according to the critics, would turn out to be a reversion to industrial primitivism in an age characterized by scientific and technological revolution. Gandhi's ideas on trusteeship were right theoretically, but the world will not implement these ideas for the simple reason that it is too late to change the path it has bestowed upon itself. In a traditional society like India, wealthy class was not in favor of sharing their wealth with others in a society on a voluntary basis. This was because of the fact that in a traditional society, accumulation of wealth was equivalent to power, influence and prestige in the society. No capitalist was prepared to lose his dominant position by voluntary acceptance of trusteeship. It has been said that Gandhiji was rather disillusioned on the end and held that his capitalist friends could never become the trustees of the people. The capitalists went to him for their own purposes mostly, but Gandhiji could not turn the heart of even one capitalist. They remained what they were. Therefore, the argument of Gandhi that capitalism could be destroyed without eliminating the capitalists is meaningless and irrational. To consider every problem from the moral perspective, irrespective of the three dimensions of past, present and the future, made Gandhi's theory of trusteeship static and artificial. He believed that non-violent non-cooperation could transform the social structure in the desired manner. The theory of trusteeship was an intrinsic part of his overall scheme of peaceful transformation of the society, but this is not supported by the situation prevailing in the contemporary world. Trusteeship theory cannot become a reality without a thorough social awakening. It is said that absolute trusteeship is unattainable since it was abstract and utopian in its thrust and significance. On the whole, critics argue that Gandhi's concept of trusteeship may appear to be irrelevant to the modern age. A critic of Gandhi might say that this doctrine is based on the assumption of the honesty on the part of the rich. But this is no criticism of Gandhi, because Gandhi's entire beliefs are based on the presupposition that every man is inwardly good. He has right to demonstrate this in various ways, and he does not want to exclude the capitalists from that. Even they are good people, only their good sense has to be aroused. If the rich do not voluntarily agree to use their riches for the welfare of the community, Gandhi suggests that the people may resort to the method of non-cooperation to make them fall in line with the wishes of the community and become trustees of their position in true sense of the term. We can say that Gandhi was against all mad races after wealth. That is why he emphasized on equal distribution of riches. The economic equality of his conception does not mean that everyone would literally have the same amount of money. It meant that each must have enough for his or her needs. The aim of this theory is to avoid concentration of economic power of wealth. The main thrust of trusteeship is very broad and deep and is not easy to comprehend. Besides, full trusteeship cases has not been experimented anywhere. The problem with this doctrine is that either has been criticized or eulogized, but not experimented. Critics may view that trusteeship is utopian in nature, but given a proper attention and careful practice, nothing is beyond the human capacities. Gandhi aimed at establishing a classless society through his doctrine of trusteeship. Every individual, by becoming a trustee for himself and for others, can cater to the needs of the society. This may dispel all the disparities both in the individual and social levels and contribute to the welfare of all. Thus, trusteeship is a novel and unique non-violent method propounded by Gandhi to bring about economic equality in the society. It is a novel and unique non-violent method propounded by Gandhi to bring about an egalitarian society. In this unit, we have tried to analyze the concept of trusteeship in the economic thought of Gandhi. He put forward this concept to bring about an egalitarian economic order in the society. The sources from which Gandhi derived this doctrine are mentioned in this unit. He suggested this as an alternative to class struggle against capitalism to bring about socialism. Through this, Gandhi wanted the social reorganization through non-violent means. He exhorts each individual to share his portion of wealth and property which is in excess of his requirement according to his social circumstances. Reasons which Gandhi gave in support of the doctrine are also included here. Finally, some criticisms leveled against this doctrine are also mentioned. Before we move to the next session, please try to answer the following questions. Critically evaluate Gandhian concept of trusteeship. In Gandhi's opinion, a wealthy man is a trustee and not the owner of his wealth. Discuss. explain how trusteeship can abolish capitalism and bring about equality in society. Bring about the criticism levelled against the Gandhian doctrine of trusteeship. Books for your reference are Harijan, Gandhi M.K. 30-12-1939, Gandhi's Concept of Decentralization, Analysis and Studies on Gandhi, Patil V.T. and I.A. Lokpur edited, Sterling Publishers, New Delhi. Sarvodaya and Freedom, a Gandhian Appraisal, Chetty Ratnam K.M., Discovery Publishing House, Delhi. Trustees, a Blind Alley or Breakthrough, Dhokhalkar Devadatta, Gandhi Marg, Volume 7, 1988. Hope you all enjoyed this session. See you next time. Goodbye.